My father told me I was built for suffering, like that was my purpose, like it was something he could assign with a pen. My name is Arden. I am 28, and I investigate financial fraud for a private firm that works cases most people only hear about on the news. I spend my days reading bank statements like they are confessionals, looking for the lie that does not match the math. The irony is, I did not catch my own family until they handed me the evidence like a gift. It happened on a Thursday night, in my parents' dining room that always smelled like lemon polish and control. My mother had set out cheese and crackers, like we were hosting friends, not deciding which daughter to throw into a cage. My sister, Rhiannon, sat on the sofa in a pale dress she did not deserve, her hands pressed to her face, her shoulders shaking in perfect, delicate sobs. Every few seconds she peeked through her fingers, checking if I was watching. My father slid a thick folder across the table toward me. He did not look nervous. He looked hungry. He said, "You can handle this. You are used to being invisible. You do 2 years, maybe less, and we take care of you when you get out." I stared at the folder. It was packed with printed emails, invoices, tax forms, and a clean summary page that read like a script. The crime was simple, brutal, and expensive. Vendor payments routed through a fake consulting company, reimbursements that never happened, money that disappeared, and then reappeared as jewelry, trips, and a new kitchen renovation. And at the top of the summary, in bold, was the name they wanted the government to see. Mine. My mother reached for my hand like she was comforting me. Her nails were freshly done, the same shade she wore to church. She said, "Sweetheart, you do not have kids. You do not have a fiancé. Rhiannon is getting married next month to a man whose family has a reputation to protect. If she goes down, everything collapses." My sister made a noise that sounded like a broken bird. My father tapped the folder with one finger. He said, "The investigators already have enough to charge someone. We just need the right story. You were around the business, you helped sometimes, you had access. It will make sense." I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my face soft. I let my eyes go glossy. I let my voice crack in the exact way they expected. I said, "I need 1 day." My father leaned back, satisfied, like he had ordered a difficult meal and the kitchen had finally agreed. He said, "Fine, 24 hours. Then you do the right thing." I stood up slowly, holding the folder like it weighed more than paper. I did not scream. I did not ask why. I did not beg for mercy. I nodded like a loyal employee. But inside, something cold slid into place, because they did not just want me to lie. They wanted me to disappear. I drove away from their house with the folder on the passenger seat like a silent witness. My hands were steady on the wheel, yet my chest felt like it was full of hot air, ready to burst. 2 streets over, I pulled into the dark corner of a grocery store parking lot and turned off the engine. The quiet hit me so hard I almost laughed. For years, I told myself my parents were just emotionally stingy, not cruel. That they loved me in a practical way, the way you love a spare tire. You do not think about it until you are stranded. Then you act like it owes you. Rhiannon had always been the showpiece. The one they posted about. The one they introduced with pride. She failed at 2 different careers, and my parents called it her finding herself. I worked my way through school, and they called it me being stubborn. I remembered last winter, scrolling through photos of my sister in a coastal resort, wearing white linen, holding a drink that cost more than my weekly groceries. My mother had commented, "My girl is thriving." I remember reading it while sitting on my apartment floor, eating noodles from a paper cup, because I did not want to waste money on heat. And now they wanted me to go to prison, so she could walk down the aisle in a clean dress. I opened the folder again, right there in the car, and scanned the evidence. The patterns were real. The money trail was real. The fraud was not a misunderstanding. It was planned. It was repeated. It was someone believing the rules were for other people. I whispered into the empty car, "Why am I in this folder at all?" Then a thought snapped through me, sharp as glass. If they were willing to send me to prison, they had already used me in ways I had not seen. My phone was still in my hand when I searched for my credit report portal. I told myself I was just checking, just making sure I had no surprises, just being responsible. But my stomach already knew. I logged in, answered the security questions, and waited. The screen loaded, and the numbers that appeared felt like a punch delivered with a smile. My score was wrecked, not slightly bruised. Wrecked. I scrolled through open accounts and felt my skin go cold. 3 credit cards, maxed out. A business line of credit, tied to a company name I had never heard in my life. A personal loan opened years ago, with late payments stacked like bodies. And there, under contact and recovery information, was the detail that made my breath stop. The same phone number listed on every account. My father's number. My hands stopped shaking. It was like my body had finally decided panic was a waste of fuel. It was not just that they were sacrificing me tonight. They had been sacrificing me for years. They had been borrowing my name, spending it, ruining it, and then acting surprised that I did not shine as bright as Rhiannon. I leaned back and stared up at the dark windshield. Rain started to tap lightly, like the sky was trying to get my attention. I thought about every time my parents told me they could not help with rent. Every time they said money was tight. Every time my mother sighed and said, "Arden, you are so independent, you will be fine." They were not praising me. They were freeing themselves to steal more. Quick pause when I am editing these late at night. Your comments keep me going. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me your city, state, or country, all right? Now let me take you back. By morning, I had not slept. I did not cry. I did not call a friend. I did not even drink coffee. I just worked. I brought my laptop to a small coworking space downtown where nobody knew my family name. I printed what I needed and built a timeline. If my father wanted a story, fine. I would write one. But I would write it in a way that forced the ending they deserved. The fraud tied to Rhiannon was ugly, but the identity theft was worse. It meant my parents had committed crimes long before this crisis. It meant they were not panicking because they had morals. They were panicking because the wedding was in 30 days and the groom, Wilder, came from a family that treated reputation like religion. That gave me an opening because wealthy families do not forgive embarrassment. They cut it out like rot. I pulled property records next. I looked for what my parents valued more than their own pride. The answer was obvious the second the map loaded. Their house, a beautiful old place in a historic neighborhood. The kind of home my mother loved to show off because it looked like stability. My father loved it because it made him feel like a man who could not be moved. It was almost paid off, and it was the only real asset left standing. I could have gone straight to law enforcement with what I found, but I knew how my father would react. He would say I was lying. He would say I was unstable. He would point to the business accounts and claim I was involved. He would paint me as the secret mastermind and my sister as the confused victim. People believe confident parents. They do. So I needed something else. I needed my parents to sign their own trap. By late afternoon, I had drafted a simple set of documents that looked harmless to someone desperate. It was not complicated. It was not flashy. It was the kind of thing my client signed every day without understanding the consequences. A transfer of interest, a temporary holding arrangement, a protection strategy, at least on the surface. I also texted a mobile notary I trusted, a woman who did not ask questions and did not gossip. I told her to be at my parents' house at 8 sharp. I told her to treat it like any other signing. Verify IDs, stamp, leave. Then I drove back to the house that had always made me feel small. The sun was setting, turning the windows gold. Inside, I could already see movement. My mother was probably arranging flowers. My father was probably rehearsing his threats. My sister was probably practicing her innocent face for the next man she planned to ruin. I parked, took a deep breath, and picked up the folder they gave me, along with the new papers I had prepared. I was not walking in as their sacrifice. I was walking in as their consequence. I stepped onto the porch, lifted my hand, and rang the doorbell, listening to the locks slide open. The door opened with my mother's smile already in place, like she had been waiting behind it practicing. The warm light from the foyer chandelier hit my eyes and made me blink, but I kept my posture small, my shoulders slightly rounded, my mouth trembling at the corners. She leaned in and whispered, "Good girl," like I was a dog returning to heel. My father's voice carried from the dining room, sharp and impatient. "Is she ready?" My mother took the folder from my hands and walked me in by the elbow, steering me like I was fragile. The house smelled like citrus cleaner and expensive candles. The kind of scent meant to make visitors feel safe. It did not work on me anymore. Rhiannon sat on the sofa again, this time holding a glass of water with both hands. She looked up, and her eyes were red in a way that suggested she had squeezed them in the bathroom mirror for 10 minutes. Her mascara was perfect, though. Her dress was perfect. Her face was still the face my parents would protect at any cost. She said, "Arden, I'm sorry." Her voice cracked on cue. I stared at her, then dropped my gaze like I believed her. I let my throat work like I was swallowing tears. My father stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, jaw tight. He didn't waste time. He pointed at the chair. Sit. I sat. He slid the original dossier toward me again, like reminding me what I owed. Then he leaned forward and lowered his voice, the voice he used when he wanted to sound reasonable while doing something unforgivable. We spoke to someone. You turn yourself in tomorrow morning. You say you ran the numbers. You say you got desperate. You say Rhiannon didn't know. You keep it simple. 2 years, maybe less with good behavior. Then you come home and we help you restart. Restart. Like my life was a laptop that could be shut down and booted later. I nodded slowly. I let my lips part like the words were hard to form. I said, I will do it. My mother exhaled dramatically, like she had been holding her breath all day. She reached for my hand again, squeezed too tight, and said, I knew you'd do the right thing. My father's shoulders loosened. He looked at Rhiannon with a softness he never used on me. There, he said to her like she was the victim. We're handling it. Rhiannon dabbed her eyes and whispered, Wilder can never find out. That name hung in the air like a threat. Wilder, the future husband. The prize. The reason my parents were willing to burn me alive. I kept my face down and made my voice small. I said, there's something else. 3 heads snapped toward me. I pulled my new documents out of my bag, careful, slow, like I was revealing a wound. I laid them on the table and watched my father's eyes flick over the pages. I said I did what you told me. I thought about it all night. And I spoke to a lawyer friend, just hypothetically. I didn't tell them names, but they said because the fraud amount is so high, the government will try to recover money. Restitution. They go after assets connected to the people who benefited. My father's eyebrows knit. What does that mean? I swallowed. I let my eyes shine like panic was rising. It means if I plead guilty, they might trace where the money went. Renovations, travel, gifts. They might say the house is connected. They might freeze it. Maybe even take it to pay investors back. The room went very still. My father's hand tightened on the edge of the table. My mother's mouth opened slightly, like she was trying to breathe without looking like she was breathing. Rhiannon whispered, they can't take the house. My father's voice went hoarse. That's not possible. I leaned in and I let the lie sound like fear instead of strategy. They can. They do it all the time. If the money touched anything here, if they prove it improved property value, they can argue it's an asset tied to fraud. And if I'm the one who admits guilt, I'm the one who puts a spotlight on all of it. My father stared at the papers in front of him. I watched the moment he stopped thinking like a parent and started thinking like a man protecting his idol. He said, so what do we do? I let my hands shake just a little. I said, there's a way to protect the house before anything starts. Temporary, just until this blows over. It's an asset protection structure. We transfer the deed into a holding company, so it's not in your names when the investigation begins. That way they can't freeze it. My mother's voice went thin. A holding company. I nodded. It's common. It's legal if it's done correctly. People do it during lawsuits, divorces, business disputes. We just need it done before I go in tomorrow. My father snatched the first page and scanned it like his eyes could burn the words into safety. He turned the page, then the next. His finger paused at the signature section. Then he stopped. He looked up at me slowly, suspicious returning like a bad smell. This says you are the managing member. I let my breath catch. I let my voice go quieter, almost ashamed. That's the point. If your names are attached, it's obvious. The investigators will search you. You have social standing. You're easy to find. But me, I'm already the one taking responsibility. I'm the straw person. I hold it temporarily. You can force me to transfer it back whenever you want. I will do whatever you ask. I always have. I made my eyes round, pleading, like I was offering them my body to hide behind. I could feel my heart beating, but it wasn't fear. It was focus. Because my father wasn't reading the documents like a cautious man. He was reading them like a drowning man offered a rope. My mother leaned toward him. Arthur, we have to... She didn't even ask if she should trust me. She didn't even wonder if she had created the kind of daughter who might bite back. She just wanted her house safe. Rhiannon's voice rose, frantic. Dad, please. If they take the house, we're finished. Wilder's family will know. They will know everything. That did it. My father grabbed the pen and pressed it into his fingers like a weapon. He glared at me, still trying to feel powerful, still trying to make it clear I was beneath him. If you mess this up, he said, I'll ruin you. I nodded quickly. I whispered, I know. He signed. My mother signed next, her hand trembling but not with guilt. With attachment. Rhiannon did not sign. She watched like a parasite watching the host bleed. Her lips were slightly parted, eyes wide, already imagining her wedding photos staying intact. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The notary was outside. I stood quickly and said, "She's here." My father frowned. "Who?" I forced my voice to sound embarrassed. "A notary. It needs to be stamped or it's useless. She's discreet. She won't talk." My father waved a hand like he was annoyed I needed oxygen. "Fine. Get it done." I opened the door and stepped into the cooler air. The notary, a middle-aged woman with a neat bun and a leather folder, stood under the porch light. Her eyes flicked to mine, professional and unreadable. She said, "Evening." I nodded and led her inside. My father barely looked at her, like anyone doing honest work was invisible to him. My mother offered her water, overly sweet, trying to make the moment feel normal. The notary verified their IDs, watched them initial, stamped every page, and slid the papers back toward me. The sound of the stamp was soft, but in my head it sounded like a vault door closing. My father leaned back in his chair the second she was done, like the danger had passed. He didn't notice my hands were not shaking anymore. He didn't notice my breathing had slowed. The notary left without a word. I walked her to the door and watched her car lights disappear down the street. When I came back into the dining room, the atmosphere had shifted. The panic was gone. In its place was entitlement, as if my parents had just successfully pulled off a clever trick, not committed another crime. My mother poured wine. She held the glass with 2 fingers, elegant, pretending this was a dinner party. She said, "Good. Now we can focus on the wedding." My father pointed at the dossier again. "Tomorrow morning, no stalling." Rhiannon finally spoke, and her voice was cold now that she felt safe. "Make it clean. No drama. I don't want Wilder hearing rumors." I looked at her and saw something I had never allowed myself to see clearly. She wasn't desperate. She wasn't afraid. She was spoiled. She had never once thought the rules applied to her because my parents had spent her entire life proving they didn't. My father stood, walked around the table, and stopped behind my chair. His hand landed on my shoulder, heavy, possessive. He said, "You're useful when you don't fight. Remember that." My mother smiled at me like she was proud of a chore completed. She said, "After this, you'll finally have done something that matters for the family." I stared at the wine swirling in her glass. My mind ran the math again, the identity theft, the fraud, the plan to hand me to the government, and the new deed sitting in my bag. I could have ended it right there. I could have told them immediately that they had signed away the only thing they cared about. I could have watched their faces collapse, but I didn't, not yet, because I needed one more thing. Something that would make them destroy themselves without me lifting a finger. I needed them to confess, clearly, loudly, in their own voices. So I reached into my pocket, turned my phone screen slightly away from them, and pressed one button. The recorder began to run. Then I lifted my head slowly, and I let my expression shift from scared daughter to something calmer, flatter, almost curious. My father noticed first. His eyes narrowed. "What is that look?" I took a breath, and my voice came out steady. I said, "Before I go tomorrow, I need you to say it again. I need to hear it. That you want me to claim Rhiannon's crimes as mine." My mother's smile faltered. "Arden, don't start." I kept my eyes on my father. I said, "Just say it clearly, so I don't mess up the story." He stared at me, suspicious, yet arrogant enough to believe he was untouchable. He opened his mouth to answer, and Rhiannon leaned forward, impatient, and snapped, "Tell her. Tell her she's taking the fall. She's always taken the fall." My father's jaw tightened. He spoke anyway, sharp and final. "You admit everything. You say you did it. You protect your sister. That's what you do." My phone recorded every word. I watched his mouth close, like he had just sealed his own coffin. For a heartbeat, none of them moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and the tiny clink of my mother's wine glass as her hand started to shake. My father's eyes narrowed further. "Why are you staring at me like that?" I didn't answer right away. I reached forward calmly and turned my phone so the screen faced them. A bright red dot blinked at the top. The timer was counting up. My mother's face drained so fast it looked like someone pulled a plug. "Arden," she whispered, "what is that?" My father took one step forward, instinctively going for control. "Turn it off." Rhiannon's eyes went wide. She stood up so quickly her water sloshed onto the rug. "Are you recording us?" I kept my voice even, almost gentle, because I knew the calmer I sounded, the crazier they would feel. I said, "I needed it clear. You told me to take the fall. You told me to confess to crimes I did not commit." My father's hand clenched. He looked like he wanted to strike me, but he didn't. Not because he loved me, because he finally realized this wasn't a family conversation anymore. It was evidence. He tried to pivot, tried to reframe it like he always did. You're twisting my words. I nodded slowly. No, I'm preserving them. Rhiannon's voice sharpened into a hiss. Delete it. Right now, you have no idea what you're doing. I tilted my head. I know exactly what I'm doing. I do it for a living. My father froze. For the first time in that room, he looked confused. What do you mean? And I felt something almost like relief. Not joy, not peace. Just the relief of finally stepping out of the role they wrote for me. I said I'm not a data entry clerk. I never was. I'm a forensic auditor. I find money trails. I find shell companies. I find the hidden parts people assume nobody will ever look at. My mother's mouth opened and closed, trying to form an apology she didn't deserve. Why would you lie about that? I let out a quiet breath. Because you never asked, not once. My father took another step toward me, lowering his voice as if volume could fix this. This is family. You don't do this to family. I looked him in the eye and felt how clean the anger was now, how pure. You were going to send me to prison, I said. You already did it. You just needed the government's stamp. Rhiannon surged forward. You're being dramatic. You always do this. You always make everything about you. I laughed once, short and sharp. You're right. I'm making it about me. Because for years you made it about you. My father's gaze snapped to the folder still on the table, the evidence of the fraud they wanted me to wear. He swallowed and tried a different tactic. What do you want? There it was. Not remorse, negotiation. I reached into my bag and pulled out a second folder, thinner, cleaner. I placed it gently on the table like a gift. It wasn't a gift. It was a mirror. I said, I want my name back. I want you to stop using me as a hiding place. My mother's lips trembled. Arden, please. Rhiannon's voice went shrill. If you ruin this wedding, Wilder will leave me. My eyes flicked to her. You should have thought of that before you used my identity like a credit card. My father stared at me with a hatred that felt almost familiar. He said, you can't prove anything. Those accounts could be yours. I nodded again like I was listening to a child lie badly. I can. The logins, the IP history, the recovery email, your phone number, your signature on the loan documents. The way your email address is tied to the accounts. The way the business transfers looped through your personal account before they paid the contractor for the kitchen. My mother flinched at the word kitchen. My father's expression tightened. You don't have that. I opened the thinner folder and slid one page toward him. It was a printout of the recovery contact information and a transaction chain summary. I had highlighted nothing. I didn't need theatrics. The truth was ugly enough. His eyes moved across the page. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Rhiannon's voice softened suddenly, syrupy, pretending she had ever been my sister. Arden, listen. We can fix this. We can pay those cards down. We can put things back. Just delete the recording and we'll take care of you, I swear. My father's head snapped toward her. Angry she was begging, and I realized she wasn't begging for me. She was begging for her photos, her dress, her last name on the invitation. I leaned forward slightly. I said there's more. My father's eyes sharpened. What? I reached into my bag again, and this time I pulled out the notarized documents. The ones they had signed like desperate fools. I didn't wave them. I didn't gloat. I simply laid them on the table and let the paper speak. My father's gaze dropped to the signature lines. He recognized his own handwriting. He recognized my mother. His breath hitched. He said, "What is this?" I kept my tone flat. The deed transfer. The holding company. The one you were so eager to sign. My mother blinked rapidly, like her eyes could erase what she was seeing. The house is safe, she said automatically. You said it would be safe. I nodded. It is safe. Rhiannon exhaled, relieved for half a second, then frowned. Safe from who? I looked at my father. I said, safe from you. My father's face went hard. Explain. I lifted my phone again, still recording, and held it steady. The company you signed it into is mine. I am the managing member. I own it. Which means I own the house. For a moment, the room went silent in a way that felt holy. Then my mother made a sound like she had been stabbed. No, you wouldn't. My father lunged toward the papers, grabbing them as if tearing them could change the county records. You tricked us. I didn't flinch. I warned you. I told you it had to be in my control to work. You chose to believe I was too weak to ever use that against you. Rhiannon's voice went wild. That's theft. That's illegal. I tilted my head. Funny. You suddenly care about illegal. My father's hands shook now. You will sign it back. I shook my head once. No. His eyes bulged. You think you can just steal our home? I leaned in and spoke softly, so every word landed. You signed it. In front of a notary. On camera, you also admitted you were trying to frame me for a felony. If you challenge the deed in court, the first thing your attorney will ask is why you transferred it. And then you will have to explain the fraud. You will have to explain my identity theft. You will have to explain why you demanded your daughter confess to crimes that benefited you. My mother's face twisted. Arden, don't do this. We raised you. I stared at her. You used me. My father's voice dropped into a growl. You're bluffing. You won't go to the authorities. You're too scared. I smiled, small and tired. I already scheduled a meeting. But whether I send the file depends on what you do next. He swallowed. I stopped the recording and saved it. Then I did something that made my father's anger crack into fear. I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked toward the front door. My mother rushed after me. Arden, please, we can talk. I turned at the door and looked at all three of them, seeing them clearly, finally. I said, you have 7 days to vacate my property. If you step 1 inch out of line, the recording and the full file go to the investigators and to Wilder's family. Rhiannon's face contorted. You wouldn't tell them. I met her eyes. I would. I walked out into the night air and felt my lungs fill like they hadn't in years. I didn't go home. I went straight to the county recorder's office drop box and filed the deed transfer that night. The next morning, I met with an attorney I trusted and handed over the full package. Not as a threat, as a shield, because I wasn't just punishing them. I was protecting myself. Then I made one call that changed everything. I called Wilder's mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice polished and cautious. The voice of a woman who knew how to keep a family clean in public. This is she. I said, my name is Arden. I'm engaged to no one, but I believe you may be about to marry your son into a crime scene. There was a pause, sharp. Excuse me. I didn't rant. I didn't beg. I simply offered facts like I was presenting a report. I told her there was financial fraud connected to Rhiannon. I told her my identity had been used to hide it. I told her I had documentation. I told her I had a recording of my parents instructing me to confess. Her voice turned cold. Send it. So I did. By afternoon, my phone lit up with messages that sounded like a family burning down in real time. Rhiannon called first, screaming so hard her voice cracked. What did you do? Wilder won't answer me. His mother just showed up at my apartment with a lawyer. My father called next, trying charm. Arden, this has gone too far. We can settle this quietly. Then my mother called, sobbing genuinely for the first time in her life, but she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the house, for the neighbors, for the illusion. I didn't answer any of them. I waited. 4 days later, I received a forwarded email from Wilder's family attorney. The engagement was terminated. The wedding venue was notified. The vendors were canceled. The sterling-level lifestyle my sister had been clinging to evaporated in one clean, legal sentence. 2 days after that, an investigator contacted me. They already had questions. All I did was answer them truthfully, with documentation, with dates, with signatures, with trails. My father and mother tried to threaten me the next time they saw me, but their courage was gone. They stood on the porch like strangers, watching movers carry their furniture out under a court-approved notice. My father's face was gray. My mother's eyes were swollen. Rhiannon wasn't there. She was hiding from cameras and consequences. I stood across the street with my attorney and watched the front door of that house close behind them. My father looked at me one last time, and his voice was small, almost confused. You really did this? I nodded, yes, and then I said the only thing that mattered. You taught me that love in this family is conditional. I finally learned how to set the conditions. 3 months later, my credit was in dispute resolution with the accounts flagged as fraudulent. My name was cleared in the ways that count. I moved into a new apartment with sunlight and quiet. I bought myself groceries without checking my bank balance like I was praying. The house sold quietly through my holding company, and the proceeds went to restitution first, not because I owed it, but because it closed the loop and removed their last excuse to blame me. What was left went to legal fees and my future. I didn't feel guilty. I felt done. The last time I ever saw my mother, she tried to speak to me in a courthouse hallway. She reached out like she wanted to touch my arm. I stepped back. She whispered, "You're still our daughter." I looked at her calm and said, "I am my own." Then I turned and walked away without looking back. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't belong to the people who tried to trade me like currency.